go, doing a movie video. I haven't done one of these in a straight up minute, and also by moving my arms, I just realized that another thing I haven't done in a straight up minute is shave my armpits, so doing good. I've got a couple of lists going for movies, and today we are going to do the best horror movies and a couple of action movies that I have watched recently. Next, I'm going to be doing the worst horror movies that I have seen recently, and then I just want to give you like my top 10 favorite movies of all time. So leave your best horror movies that you have watched recently, and I'm sure I've missed a ton of them because it's not like these are all new releases or anything. These are just things that I finally got around to watching, or me and Cooper were having a movie night and we randomly picked a couple, and it turns out that some of them, while garbage, like straight up trash, some of them are really good. Okay, so the first movie is Afflicted. We watched this on Amazon Prime, and essentially it's kind of like a docu-style travel vlog, but things deteriorate real quick. And it was just one of those movies where like you weren't sitting there telling them in your head that they were making dumb fucking choices. There were a lot of times that, first of all, I appreciated that there wasn't the typical trope where like off the bat no one believed the main character. The friend was kind of in it ride or die. There were a couple of decisions that were being made that I was like, perhaps we don't do this. But also, it wasn't decisions that like, when you're in the moment, you would clearly as a rational person make a completely other choice. It's something that like you could understand that they're stressed and like they don't want to go a super dramatic route for something, so maybe they tried this, even though it kind of like spirals into like this was a dumb idea. But it wasn't like a dumb enough choice that was like, oh my god, this movie's so stupid. And there were some really good decisions that I was like, oh my god, like that's a fucking genius idea. I wouldn't have thought of that, but these movie makers were pretty smart. So I enjoyed this movie a lot. And if you want a good, yeah, like documentary kind of horror movie that's not like overly scary or anything, it's a pretty good general watch for horror fans and non-horror fans alike because it includes so many different kind of genres. As above, so below. I love this movie. I know that I've talked about it before, and I know that this is kind of a movie that it separates people. People aren't always like, God, it's the greatest. There's a lot of people who think that it's kind of a trash movie, but I really like it because this is one of the only movies that can make me kind of like, ugh. There's a couple like jump scare kind of things, but it's not something that they heavily rely on because the atmosphere of this movie is so like scary in itself. This was one of the first movies that was allowed to film in the Paris catacombs, which was amazing, like just to see something like that on film. I will say some negatives, like there's a couple characters that you don't really get to see be developed. They are very clearly throwaway characters, but the characters that matter are developed enough and their motivations for doing this are clear enough, except for one. One character just kind of was like, I guess. Like, and that was the one decision that like throughout the whole movie it was just like maybe there could have been a better reason for him to be there, but he was just kind of like pushed into this journey and then he just kind of had to go along with it. But it was what it was. The whole movie I enjoyed overall, and it's one that I will rewatch like once a year because I like it. I also watched #Alive, which is a Netflix movie. Also, As Above, So Below was on Netflix, but it was taken off, so you gotta find it elsewhere. So Alive is a South Korean horror zombie movie, and it's very fitting for the times that we are in, at least in Canada, going back into like, stop getting those high numbers, Alberta. Yeah, it's very embarrassing to live here currently, but it's a very like, again, kind of claustrophobic, but just because you're stuck in one location. And I love zombie movies that are like this, where it's not some dude living out on a farm and they're a prepper and they're out into the woods. Like, this is what would happen if you were trapped in an apartment complex, or this is what would happen if you were in the city, and it's like you're not one of those people to like just run out into the streets right when the zombie apocalypse is happening, because what the fuck are you thinking, my guy? Like, it's just, It's one of those things that, like, this is probably what would happen for a lot of people should the zombie apocalypse actually happen. And I enjoyed the journey of watching it. The subtitles or the dubbing wasn't too distracting. It makes me want to watch a lot more Korean horror films because there have been a ton of them coming out, and there's also a ton of big ones that I've missed. Like, I've never seen Train to Busan, and that's definitely next on my list. And then on Valentine's Day, which we're going way back now, I watched The Rental with my boyfriend, and this was Dave Franco's directing debut. It came out to mixed reviews. A lot of people said that it was just kind of like artsy and blah. I enjoyed it. But I think that is probably because I like these kinds of, like, you're isolated in a house and you're being kind of stalked, and like, I like those sorts of movies. It isn't an original concept, for sure, but I enjoyed the process of watching the movie. I think that there was a lot of, like, levity in the humor, and I think that the way that all these people interacted was very, like, it was natural and it was organic, and the actors had a lot of chemistry between them. So it was an enjoyable watch if you need something to watch. It was good enough that I don't classify it bad, like to put on my bad movies list. So this next one is not a horror, but it is classified as an action thriller, which it is definitely more of an action, I would say. There's moments of tension, but it was so good, and I've watched it recently, and like, it's a newer movie, so you gotta see it. It is Nobody. So it stars Bob Odenkirk, whatever, Better Call Saul, basically, and the casting choice for this movie was incredible. It was such a good, like, literally nobody, like, not that he's a nobody, he's an incredible actor and like, he's so talented, but he's nobody that you would see in a role like this. He's not like the typical go-to action star, and he kicks some absolute incredible ass in this movie, and it is just, it's very John Wick. I mean, people have made that comparison all over the place. People wanted to see crossovers between the two, which the director came out and said was pretty unlikely because it was made by two different studios. If you haven't seen it, you must. It's incredible. And then the next movie that I loved, much to the surprise of my boyfriend, because I had been fighting against seeing this movie. He watched it and loved it, and every time he would see it on Netflix, he was like, that was an incredible movie, we should watch it. And I was like, no, because I have to be in like a specific mood to watch action movies. Like, I can watch horror any day of the week. Like, anytime I am down to clown for some horror movies, but action, like, I gotta be able to, like, I gotta want to see gunfights and shit like that, and I just wasn't in the mood. But he was like, can we watch it? And I was like, okay, whatever. So Project Power, beautiful movie, really good, really glad I watched it. He was right. It had incredibly cool visuals. The whole story was like really well done. The motivations of everybody involved were very clear. You understood why everyone was in the position that they were in. The development of the characters, great. Like, the casting, like, especially the casting, just so good. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, amazing. And then I specifically loved Dominique Fishback, who was the younger girl, and her rapping skills also, by the way, like, amazing. And just her acting, just everything, so good. The evil people were just, it was a very throwaway, like, no shit kind of evil concept, but it was such a good movie with like a good enough concept overall and like good enough fleshed out main characters that I didn't really sit there and dwell on the fact that, like, well, the evil side of this movie or the bad guys, the villains, aren't really fleshed out. Like, you kind of get their motivation, but also like kind of not really. It's just not a very creative idea, which, like, granted, I guess money is sort of the motivator for a lot of things, money and power, but it was just kind of a lazy sort of villainy motive. But nonetheless, the movie was absolutely like a joy to watch. There's one visual near the end, and if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about, and it is just so cool. Like, I literally had to like pause the movie and rewind it because I was like, that was sick. Like, it just has some really cool visuals throughout the movie, and it makes sense because the movie's all about like this drug that gives you powers, and it's cool to watch. It's so cool. Those are all of the good movies I have watched within the last couple of months. I've been watching a lot of 90 Day Fiancé, so excuse my lack of movies. I've got a whole list on Amazon Prime and a whole list on Netflix, and please feel free to add more movies to my list of things I need to watch because I miss doing videos like this. I like to have a record of things that I've watched so I can go back and be like, oh, I want something familiar, and then just like look through these videos and be like, that one, or like certainly not fucking that one, which is why I'm excited to make the next video where I talk about just the worst movies I've seen recently. One of them I watched 2 nights ago and it was dog shit. It was fucking awful. And I really enjoy making videos where I talk about things that I didn't like because I'm not a very ranty, angry person, but like those videos help me get that shit out. You know, it's like cleansing for me. That is it. Leave your best movies that you have seen recently, horror or otherwise, since God knows I really didn't stick on that title. My bad. So sorry. Leave it in the comments down below. And I love you so much, and I will see you very soon. Bye, guys.